The blood-red sun sank low on the horizon as Hazel Greene stumbled down the dusty main street of Copper Creek, her feet raw inside worn-out boots, and her stomach aching with 3 days' hunger. The year was 1878, and this remote Arizona mining town represented her last hope after a journey that had taken everything from her. Hazel clutched the small carpet bag, containing her only possessions closer to her chest, trying to maintain whatever dignity she had left. Her once fine blue dress, now tattered and stained with the red dirt of the trail, hung loosely on her frame. 3 months ago, she'd been a schoolteacher in Boston with a secure position and respectable life. Now, at 24, she was a desperate woman with nowhere to turn. The few establishments still open at this hour displayed their signs boldly. Miners welcome. Rooms for rent. But Hazel knew from bitter experience that a lone woman arriving in town after dark would find no welcome behind those doors. She'd learned this lesson painfully in the last 3 towns she'd passed through. "Excuse me," she called to a passing gentleman in a dusty suit. "Could you direct me to a boarding house that might accommodate a lady?" The man glanced at her torn dress and dirty face, his expression hardening. "No decent establishment would take in someone of your appearance at this hour, unless you're looking for the saloon work." His implication stung worse than if he'd slapped her. "I am a school teacher, sir," Hazel replied with what remained of her dignity. "I seek only proper lodging." The man laughed harshly. "A schoolteacher wouldn't be wandering alone after sundown. Move along before I call the sheriff." Hazel watched him walk away, fighting back the hot tears threatening to spill. When her brother's letter had reached her in Boston, begging her to join him at his promising silver claim in Arizona territory, she'd had such hope. But she'd arrived to discover Thomas's grave, freshly dug behind a saloon in Willow Springs, shot dead in a dispute over his claim. With no family left and her savings depleted by the journey west, she'd been moving from town to town, seeking work that never materialized. Copper Creek had been her destination for nearly a week of walking. She'd heard there was a need for a schoolteacher here, but looking at the rough establishments lining the street, she wondered if she'd been misled again. Hazel approached the first establishment, a respectable-looking boarding house with lace curtains. The plump woman who answered her knock took one look at her and promptly shut the door in her face. "We don't take in vagrants," came the muffled voice from inside. The next 3 establishments provided variations of the same response. At the 5th building, a hotel with peeling paint but a proper sign, the clerk looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. "No room," he said before she could speak. "Please," Hazel said, her voice cracking. "I have money to pay. Just for one night until I can present myself more appropriately." "We're full up," the man insisted, though she could see the key rack behind him was nearly empty. "Try the saloon. They might have work for a woman in your position." By the 8th rejection, night had fully descended and Hazel's strength was failing. Her legs trembled beneath her, and spots danced at the edges of her vision from hunger and exhaustion. The last boarding house matron had actually shouted at her to leave before decent folk spotted her at the door. As she stumbled away from the town's only hotel, Hazel felt her knees finally give way. She collapsed onto a wooden bench outside the general store, closed for the night. She allowed herself one moment of despair, a single sob escaping her lips before she clamped down on her emotions. She couldn't afford weakness now. "Looks like you're having a rough night, madam." The voice came from her left, deep and quiet. Hazel startled, immediately rising to her feet despite her exhaustion. A tall man stood a few paces away, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. In the dim light from the nearby saloon, she could make out a leather vest over a simple shirt, worn jeans and dusty boots, the typical attire of a working cowboy. "I apologize for disturbing you, sir," Hazel said, gathering her carpetbag. "I'll move along." "No need," the man said, stepping closer. As he moved into the pool of light from the saloon window, Hazel could see his face tanned from the sun, with striking blue eyes and a jawline darkened with stubble. He wasn't young, perhaps 35, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years squinting into the sun. "I couldn't help but notice you've been turned away from about every door in town." Hazel stiffened, pride rising through her exhaustion. "I've simply encountered a streak of bad luck. I'll find accommodations eventually." The man's mouth quirked up slightly at one corner. "Not in Copper Creek, you won't. Not tonight, anyway. Folks here are suspicious of strangers, especially after dark." "Then I shall make do," Hazel replied, clutching her bag tighter. The cowboy studied her for a long moment. "My name's Noah Blackwood. I've got a small ranch about a mile outside of town. It's not much, but there's a spare room where my sister stays when she visits." "You'd be welcome to it for the night." Hazel's eyes widened. The offer was simultaneously her salvation and potentially her doom. A woman alone accepting lodging from an unknown man would be risking everything. "I couldn't possibly. You can't possibly spend the night on this bench, either," Noah interrupted gently. "There's wolves been coming close to town lately, not to mention the less savory characters that'll be pouring out of that saloon in a few hours." He gestured to the raucous establishment down the street. Hazel hesitated, weighing her limited options. Noah seemed to sense her thoughts. "I understand your concern, madam. Tell you what, my ranch hand Miguel and his wife Luisa live in a cabin on my property. Luisa can come with us, and you can stay in their cabin tonight if you'd feel safer." The consideration in his offer surprised her. "Why would you help me? You don't know anything about me." Noah's expression grew serious. "I know you're in trouble, and I know what it's like to find every door closed when you need one open. My door stays open to those who need it." His words cut through Hazel's carefully constructed defenses. After months of suspicion and rejection, the simple kindness nearly undid her. She swallowed hard, straightening her shoulders. "I am Hazel Greene, formerly a schoolteacher from Boston. I came west to join my brother at his mining claim, only to discover he had died. I have been seeking honest employment since." Noah nodded, offering no condolences or pity, which Hazel found oddly comforting. "A pleasure to meet you, Miss Greene. Now, if you'll wait here a moment, I'll fetch Luisa. My wagon's just down the street." True to his word, Noah returned 10 minutes later with a gentle-faced Mexican woman in her 40s and a horse-drawn wagon. Luisa smiled warmly at Hazel, speaking in accented English. "Señor Noah says you need shelter. Come, we will take care of you." For the first time in weeks, Hazel felt the tight knot in her chest loosen slightly. She allowed Noah to help her into the wagon, noting the strength in his hands and the careful way he made sure she was settled before climbing up to take the reins. As they left the unwelcoming lights of Copper Creek behind, Hazel wondered what kind of man this Noah Blackwood truly was, and whether his open door would prove to be her salvation, or yet another disappointment in a journey filled with them. The wagon bumped and jostled along the rutted dirt road, and Hazel had to grip the wooden seat to keep from sliding. Despite her exhaustion, she remained vigilant, watching the dark landscape unfold around them. The moon had risen, casting a silvery glow over the scrubby desert terrain, punctuated by the occasional towering saguaro cactus. "It's not much further," Noah said, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "Ranch is just beyond that ridge." Luisa, sitting on Hazel's other side, patted her hand gently. "You are very tired, no? Tomorrow will be better. Senor Noah is a good man. Hazel wasn't sure how to respond. Her experiences since heading west had taught her to be wary of everyone's motives. Yet there was something in Noah's straightforward manner that inspired trust, despite her reservations. "How long have you lived in this territory, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked, seeking to learn more about her unexpected benefactor. "Going on 8 years now," Noah replied, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Came out after the war with not much more than my horse and the clothes on my back. Worked as a trail hand, then foreman for the Lazy S, saved enough to buy my own spread 4 years back. The war?" Hazel inquired, realizing he must have fought in the Civil War. Noah nodded but offered no further details. "What about you, Miss Greene? What brought a Boston schoolteacher all the way to Arizona territory?" Hazel sighed, finding herself willing to share her story. "My brother Thomas wrote about striking silver. He'd been out west for 3 years and finally found a claim that was producing. He sent for me, said Copper Creek needed a teacher badly, and with his new wealth, he could help establish a proper school." She paused, the familiar pain washing over her again. "When I arrived in Willow Springs where he'd been based, I learned he'd been killed 2 weeks earlier, shot in a dispute over his claim. The marshal there said the killer claimed self-defense and without witnesses." She trailed off. "I'm sorry," Noah said simply. "The law can be flexible out here. Was there nothing left of his claim?" Hazel shook her head. "By the time I arrived, another man had taken possession. He showed me papers, but I suspect they were falsified. The local judge wouldn't hear my case." "Sounds like Jack Harmon's work," Noah muttered. "He's been consolidating mining claims around these parts through various means, none of them particularly honest." The wagon crested the ridge, and Hazel could see lights twinkling in the valley below. As they drew closer, the outline of a modest ranch house came into view, with several smaller outbuildings scattered nearby. A corral held several horses that nickered as the wagon approached. "Welcome to the Blackwood Ranch," Noah said as he pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the main house. "It's not much, but it's home." "It looks wonderful," Hazel said sincerely. After weeks of sleeping in stagecoach stations, shabby rooms when she could afford them, and occasionally under the stars, the neat ranch house with smoke curling from its chimney looked like paradise. Noah jumped down from the wagon and came around to help Hazel descend. His hands were strong and calloused but gentle as they gripped her waist to lift her down. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her tired body, and she quickly stepped away, flustered. "Louisa, would you show Miss Greene to your cabin?" Noah asked. "I need to check on that new foal before turning in." "She, of course," Louisa said. "Come, Miss Hazel, you will eat something and then rest." Noah tipped his hat to them both. "I'll see you ladies in the morning." "Sleep well, Miss Greene." As he strode toward the barn, Hazel found herself watching him longer than was proper. There was something compelling about the tall cowboy with his direct gaze and quiet manner. Louisa's cabin was small but immaculately kept. Her husband Miguel was already asleep, having risen before dawn for his ranch duties. Louisa insisted on heating a pot of stew despite the late hour, and Hazel could have wept at the simple kindness. "You eat," Louisa said firmly, placing a bowl of fragrant stew before her. "Then I show you where to sleep." The stew was the most delicious thing Hazel had tasted in months, rich with vegetables and tender beef. As she ate, Louisa busied herself preparing a small pallet in the corner of the main room. "I cannot offer you a proper bed," she apologized. "But clean blankets and a roof, this we have." "It's more than I could have hoped for," Hazel assured her, fighting back tears of gratitude. "Thank you for your kindness." Later, lying on the surprisingly comfortable pallet, Listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert night, Hazel found her thoughts returning to Noah Blackwood, a man who opened his door when all others were closed. She wondered what experiences had shaped him into someone who would extend help to a bedraggled stranger. For the first time in months, Hazel fell asleep feeling something like hope. Morning arrived with the crow of a rooster and the soft murmur of voices outside the cabin. Hazel woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. The events of the previous night came rushing back, and she sat up quickly, smoothing her tangled hair with her fingers. Louisa was already up, tending to a small fire in the cooking stove. She smiled when she saw Hazel was awake. "Buenos dias, did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Hazel admitted, rising to fold the blankets neatly. "There is water for washing," Louisa said, gesturing to a basin in the corner. "And I have found a dress that might fit you. It belonged to my daughter before she married and moved to Tucson." Hazel was overwhelmed by the continued kindness. "I couldn't possibly—" "Please," Louisa interrupted gently. "Your dress is—" She gestured vaguely, too polite to state the obvious. Looking down at her torn, dirty garment, Hazel had to agree. "Thank you. I'll return it when I can purchase something suitable." After washing and changing into the simple but clean cotton dress, Hazel felt more human than she had in weeks. The dress was a bit loose, evidence of how much weight she'd lost on her journey, but it was intact and respectable. When she emerged from behind the privacy screen, Louisa nodded approvingly. "Much better. Now you eat breakfast, then Senor Noah wishes to speak with you." Hazel's stomach tightened with anxiety. What if he expected her to leave immediately? She had nowhere to go, and the prospect of returning to Copper Creek to face more rejection made her feel physically ill. After a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush sweetened with molasses, Hazel followed Louisa across the ranch yard toward the main house. In the daylight, she could fully appreciate the modest but well-maintained property. The main house was built of weathered wood with a covered porch wrapping around two sides. A vegetable garden flourished to one side, and chickens pecked contentedly in a fenced yard. Beyond the house stood a large barn, several corrals, and what appeared to be a bunkhouse. Noah was on the porch, speaking with a young Mexican man who Hazel assumed was Miguel. Both men turned as the women approached, and Noah's expression changed subtly when he saw Hazel. Something flickered in his eyes before he composed his features. "Good morning, Miss Greene," he said, removing his hat. "I trust you slept well." "Very well, thank you," Hazel replied formally. "Mr. Blackwood, I cannot thank you enough for your kindness last night. I'll be on my way as soon as possible." Noah frowned slightly. "And where exactly will you be heading?" The question caught Hazel off guard. She had no answer that wouldn't sound pathetic. "I'll continue to Prescott, perhaps. I've heard there might be teaching positions available there." Noah exchanged a glance with Miguel, who shook his head almost imperceptibly. "Prescott's school positions were filled last month," Noah said. "I was there on business and saw the new teachers arrive from back east." Hazel's heart sank. "I see. Then perhaps Tucson." "Miss Greene," Noah interrupted gently, "before you set off on another difficult journey, I have a proposition for you." He gestured toward the porch chairs. "Please sit. We should talk." With trepidation, Hazel settled into one of the wooden chairs. Noah took the seat across from her, while Miguel and Louisa discreetly withdrew to their morning tasks. "Miss Greene, I mentioned last night that I've been on this ranch for 4 years now. What I didn't say is that in that time, I've managed to build something promising here. I have 60 head of cattle, a small but growing horse breeding operation, and enough land to expand further." Hazel nodded, uncertain where this was leading. "What I lack," Noah continued, is certain refinements that would make this a proper home rather than just a working ranch. The truth is, this territory is changing. The railroad will reach us within 2 years. More families are settling. Copper Creek itself has a dozen children with no formal education. Hazel's interest was piqued despite herself. There's truly no school in Copper Creek. Noah shook his head. None. The town council has been trying to recruit a teacher for months, but few educated women want to come to a rough mining town, and fewer still stay once they see the conditions. But last night, no one would even speak to me, let alone mention a teaching position, Hazel pointed out. Noah's expression darkened. That's because Jack Harmon controls most of the town council and wants to bring in a male teacher from California who's a friend of his. The townspeople follow Harmon's lead if they know what's good for them. I see, Hazel said slowly, pieces falling into place. And this Jack Harmon, he's the man who's been taking over mining claims. Noah nodded. Among other businesses, he's got ambitions to control everything from Copper Creek to the territorial border. What does this have to do with me? Hazel asked directly. Noah leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. I'm offering you a position, Miss Greene. I have 8 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse. 3 have families with children. Miguel and Lewis's grandchildren visit often. That's 7 children right here with no formal education. You want me to teach them, Hazel clarified, hope rising within her. Yes, and not just them. I've spoken with several neighboring ranchers who have children. Together, we could establish a small school right here. We've already discussed converting an old storage barn into a schoolhouse. It would be modest to start, but yes, Hazel interrupted, unable to contain herself. Yes, I would be honored to teach them. Noah's serious expression broke into a genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. Excellent. As for your accommodations, there's a small cabin about 100 yards behind the main house. It was built for my foreman, but he preferred the bunkhouse. It needs some work, but it would be private and suitable for a lady. Mr. Blackwood, this is more than I could have hoped for, Hazel said earnestly. But I must ask, what do you gain from this arrangement? Surely hiring a teacher is an expense you don't need. Noah's expression grew thoughtful. Education matters, Miss Greene. I had precious little of it myself, and I've felt that lack my whole life. These children deserve better. As for expense, the neighboring ranchers have agreed to contribute to your salary. It's an investment in the future of this territory. There was logic to his explanation, but Hazel sensed there was more he wasn't saying. However, she was in no position to question good fortune. When would you like me to begin? She asked. The cabin needs a few days' work to be habitable. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay with Luisa and Miguel. As for teaching, perhaps you could meet the children today, get a sense of their current abilities. Hazel nodded eagerly. I would like that very much. Noah stood, signaling the end of their discussion. Then it's settled. Welcome to Blackwood Ranch, Miss Greene. As he extended his hand to seal their agreement, Hazel felt a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest. Taking his hand, she was again struck by the contrast between its rough texture and the gentleness of his grip. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. I won't disappoint you. Noah, he corrected with a small smile. If you're going to be living on my ranch, you might as well use my given name. Noah, Hazel repeated, the name feeling strange but pleasant on her lips. And you must call me Hazel. As their hands separated, Hazel couldn't help but wonder if she'd just found not only refuge but perhaps a place she might eventually call home. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity as Hazel settled into life at Blackwood Ranch. True to his word, Noah had introduced her to the children living on the property and arranged for her to meet those from neighboring ranches. They ranged in age from 5 to 14, with varying levels of previous education. Some of the Mexican children spoke limited English, which would present a challenge, but Hazel was determined to succeed. Meanwhile, Noah and his ranch hands worked diligently to prepare both the cabin and the former storage barn that would serve as a schoolhouse. Hazel insisted on helping with her cabin, spending hours scrubbing the floors and windows under Lewis's guidance. On her third day at the ranch, Hazel was hanging curtains she'd fashioned from fabric Noah had purchased in town when she heard the sound of hammering outside. Looking through the freshly cleaned window, she saw Noah on a ladder, repairing a loose board on the small porch roof. She stepped outside, shielding her eyes from the bright sun. "You don't need to do that yourself," she called up to him. "Surely you have more important tasks." Noah glanced down, a nail held between his lips. He removed it before speaking. "No task more important than making sure you don't get rained on if a storm blows through." He hammered the nail in with a few efficient strikes. "Besides, I built this cabin myself when I first bought the place. Seems fitting I should be the one to fix it." "You built all this?" Hazel asked, impressed as she looked around at the sturdy structures that comprised the ranch. Noah descended the ladder, wiping his hands on a rag tucked into his belt. "Not alone. Had help with the main house and barn. But this cabin I built thinking my sister might come west to join me." A shadow crossed his face. She decided Boston suited her better. Hazel caught the hint of old disappointment in his voice. "I understand. My brother and I were close once. I thought coming west would reunite us." Noah studied her face for a moment. "Loss has a way of changing our paths, sometimes for the worse, sometimes." He paused, seeming to reconsider his words. "Well, time will tell." Before Hazel could respond, Miguel approached, leading a beautiful chestnut mare. "Señor Noah, Bella is favoring her left foreleg again." Noah immediately turned his attention to the horse, running his hands expertly down the animal's leg. Hazel watched, fascinated by the gentle way this strong man handled the nervous mare, speaking to her in low, soothing tones. "It's that old injury," Noah murmured, more to himself than to the others. "Thought it had healed, but she must have strained it. Miguel, bring me the liniment from the barn, would you?" As Miguel hurried off, Noah continued to examine the horse, his focus complete. Hazel was struck by his absorption in the task, the evident care he took with the animal. "She's beautiful," Hazel commented, stepping closer but maintaining a respectful distance from the large animal. Noah glanced up, seeming almost surprised to find her still there. "She is one of my first breeding mares. Got her as a wild yearling and gentled her myself." "You have a way with her," Hazel observed. "She trusts you." Something in Noah's expression softened. "Trust is earned with horses and people alike. Bella here taught me patience like nothing else ever has." Miguel returned with a small jar, and Noah began carefully applying the liniment to the mare's leg, his strong hands working with surprising delicacy. Hazel found herself unable to look away from his methodical movements, the way his forearms flexed as he worked the medicine into the horse's muscles. When he finished, Noah straightened and patted the mare's neck. "That should help. Keep her in the small corral for a few days, Miguel." "Sí, señor," Miguel replied, leading the horse away. Noah turned back to Hazel, wiping his hands on the rag again. "How are the cabin preparations coming along?" "Nearly finished," Hazel replied, suddenly conscious of her appearance, hair escaping its pins, apron smudged with dust. "The curtains are the final touch." Noah nodded approvingly. "Good. The schoolhouse still needs work, but it should be ready by next week. I've ordered slates and readers from Prescott. They should arrive on Friday's stage." "You've thought of everything," Hazel said, touched by his thoroughness. Noah shrugged. "Just trying to give you what you need to do your job properly." He glanced at the sun's position. I should check on the men mending the north fence. Will you join us for supper at the main house tonight? Lewisa's making her special enchiladas." "I'd be delighted," Hazel replied, finding she truly meant it. As Noah walked away, Hazel returned to her curtain hanging with renewed vigor. For the first time since receiving news of her brother's death, she felt a sense of purpose returning. More surprisingly, she felt a growing curiosity about the quiet, capable man who had offered her this unexpected sanctuary. That evening, Hazel took extra care with her appearance before heading to the main house for supper. She had washed her hair and pinned it more carefully than usual, and though she had only the borrowed dress from Lewisa, she had managed to clean and press it to look more presentable. The main house was larger than her cabin, but still modest by Eastern standards. The central room combined a kitchen and dining area, with a stone fireplace along one wall and simple but sturdy furniture. Noah was setting the table when she entered, and he looked up at her arrival. "Good evening," he said, his eyes taking in her appearance briefly before returning to his task. "Lewisa's just finishing up the cooking." "Can I help?" Hazel offered, moving toward the kitchen area where Lewisa was stirring something fragrant in a large pot. "No, no," Lewisa insisted. "You are guests tonight. Sit, please." Hazel reluctantly took a seat at the table, feeling awkward with nothing to do. Noah finished setting out plates and joined her. "I rode out to check the schoolhouse progress this afternoon," he said, filling the silence. "The new roof is on and the boys are putting in windows tomorrow. Should let in good light for reading." "That's wonderful," Hazel replied. "I've been thinking about how to organize the students. With their different ages and abilities, I'll need to divide them into groups." Noah nodded, seeming genuinely interested. "Makes sense. When I was a boy, we had a one-room schoolhouse back in Tennessee. Teacher had 20 kids of all ages. Don't know how she managed it." "You attended school regularly?" Hazel asked, surprised given his earlier comment about limited education. A shadow crossed Noah's face. "Until I was 12. Then my father died and I had to work the farm. What schooling I got after that came from books I borrowed when I could." "Self-education is commendable," Hazel said sincerely. "What did you read?" "Whatever I could get my hands on," Noah replied. "History mostly. Some philosophy when I could understand it. Poetry now and then." "Poetry?" Hazel couldn't hide her surprise. A hint of color touched Noah's tanned cheeks. "Whitman. Emerson when I could find it. Makes the long winter nights pass easier." Before Hazel could respond, the front door opened, and a young boy of about 10 burst in, followed by a harried-looking woman. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood," the woman said, her accent marking her as one of the Mexican families. "Daniel insisted on bringing this tonight." The boy approached the table, holding out a crudely carved wooden object to Hazel. "It's for you, teacher," he said shyly. "Papa helped me make it." Hazel took the object, recognizing it as an attempt at a small desk ornament in the shape of an apple. "It's wonderful, Daniel," she said, genuinely touched. "Thank you. This will sit on my desk in our new schoolhouse." The boy beamed. "Papa says school starts Monday. Is that true?" "If the schoolhouse is ready, yes," Hazel confirmed. "Are you excited to learn?" Daniel nodded vigorously. "I want to read books like Mr. Blackwood. He knows everything," Noah chuckled. "Hardly everything, Daniel. That's why we need Miss Greene to teach us all." The woman tugged gently on Daniel's shoulder. "Come, Nino, we must let them eat supper. You will see Miss Greene on Monday." After they departed, Hazel examined the wooden apple more closely. "How thoughtful. I haven't even started teaching, and already I have a gift from a student." "The children are excited," Noah said. "Most have had little or no formal education. Their parents want better for them." Lewisa brought steaming plates to the table, and the conversation turned to the practical aspects of starting the school. As they ate, Hazel noticed how Noah's home, though simple, had touches that spoke of care: bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes, a carefully crafted wooden clock on the mantel, colorful woven blankets draped over the chairs. After supper, Noah surprised her by producing a small package. "I picked this up in town today," he said, pushing it across the table toward her. "Thought you might need it." Hazel opened the package to find a leather-bound journal and several pencils. "Oh," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth cover. "It's perfect. I was just thinking I needed something to plan my lessons." "Figured as much," Noah said, seeming pleased by her reaction. "Teacher needs proper tools, same as any craftsman." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched Hazel deeply. It wasn't extravagant, but it showed an understanding of her needs and respect for her profession that few had shown her since she'd come west. "Thank you," she said simply, meeting his eyes across the table. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, of shared values or mutual respect. Noah held her gaze for a beat longer than was strictly proper before looking away. "Getting late," he said, rising from the table. "I'll walk you back to your cabin." The night air was cool as they crossed the yard, the stars brilliant in the clear desert sky. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached her cabin door. "Good night, Hazel," Noah said, tipping his hat. "Sleep well." "Good night, Noah," she replied, "and thank you again for everything." As she watched him walk back toward the main house, Hazel felt a strange tugging sensation in her chest. This man was becoming more than just her employer. He was becoming someone she looked forward to seeing each day, someone whose good opinion mattered to her. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. She had come west to join her brother, had lost him, and now found herself dependent on the kindness of a man she barely knew. Yet something told her Noah Blackwood was unlike any man she had met before in Boston or since. With these confused thoughts swirling in her mind, Hazel entered her cabin, clutching the journal to her chest like a talisman against uncertainty. Monday morning dawned clear and cool, perfect weather for the first day of school. Hazel had moved into her cabin 2 days prior and spent the weekend preparing lessons and organizing the schoolhouse. Noah had been true to his word. The building was transformed from a storage barn to a proper classroom, with desks constructed by the ranch hands, a small blackboard mounted on one wall, and even a bell hung outside the door. Hazel arrived early, wanting everything to be perfect when the children arrived. She had just finished writing the day's lessons on the blackboard when she heard the sound of approaching horses and wagons. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, she stepped outside to greet her students. 3 wagons and several riders on horseback approached, carrying children from the neighboring ranches. Noah rode alongside, apparently having gone out to guide them in. The children's excited voices carried on the morning air as they spotted the schoolhouse with its new sign, Blackwood Ranch School. As families began dismounting and helping children down from wagons, Hazel straightened her dress, a new one Noah had purchased for her from the general store in Copper Creek. It was simple but clean and proper, and she felt a renewed sense of dignity wearing it. "Good morning," she called cheerfully as the children gathered. "Welcome to our first day of school," Noah approached, leading his horse. "Looks like we have a full class," he said, his eyes surveying the gathering with satisfaction. 15 children in all. "More than I expected," Hazel admitted, feeling a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Word spread," Noah explained. "The Petersons rode in from 10 miles east to bring their 3. He nodded toward a family dismounting from one of the wagons. "And Mr. Chen from the Mercantile in Copper Creek sent his son. Defied Harmon's wishes to do it too." Hazel spotted a young Chinese boy of about 12 standing nervously apart from the others. "I'll make sure he feels welcome," she promised. Noah nodded, then turned to address the assembled parents. "Folks, I want to thank you all for coming today. This school represents our shared belief that our children deserve education and opportunity, no matter how far from civilization we might be." He gestured toward Hazel. "Miss Greene comes to us from Boston, where she taught for several years. We're fortunate to have a teacher of her qualifications here in our corner of the territory." The parents murmured appreciatively, and Hazel felt a blush rise to her cheeks at Noah's praise. "School will run Monday through Friday, 9 until 3, Noah continued. "For those coming from a distance, we can arrange overnight accommodations if weather turns bad. Miss Greene has prepared a list of needed supplies for each student." As Noah finished his brief speech, Hazel stepped forward. "Thank you all for entrusting your children to my care. If the students would please line up to enter the schoolhouse, we'll begin our day." The children formed an uneven line, some excited, others apprehensive. Hazel smiled encouragingly at each one as they filed past her into the schoolhouse. The parents began to disperse, some returning to their wagons for the journey home, others lingering to chat with Noah about ranch business. Just as Hazel was about to follow the last student inside, she heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Turning, she saw 3 riders approaching rapidly from the direction of Copper Creek. Noah stepped forward, his posture suddenly alert. The lead rider was a well-dressed man in his 40s, with a thick mustache and expensive boots. The 2 men flanking him had the hard-eyed look of hired guns. "Harmon," Noah said quietly to Hazel. "Trouble." The man reined his horse to a stop, his gaze fixing first on Noah, then shifting to Hazel with open curiosity. Well, Blackwood. Heard you were starting some kind of school, but I didn't believe it. Didn't figure you for the educational type." "What do you want, Harmon?" Noah asked directly, his voice level but with an underlying tension Hazel hadn't heard before. "Just being neighborly," Harmon replied with false joviality. "Thought I'd see this teacher you've imported." His eyes raked over Hazel in a way that made her skin crawl. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Mr. Harmon," Hazel acknowledged stiffly. "If you'll excuse me, my students are waiting." "Students," Harmon repeated as if tasting the word. "Including some from Copper Creek, I hear." Interesting, considering the town council never approved this establishment. "They don't need to," Noah countered. "This school is on private property, supported by private funds." Harmon's false smile faded. "Everything that happens in this county is my business, Blackwood." "You do well to remember that." The tension in the air was palpable. Several of the lingering parents had moved closer, and Hazel noticed Miguel and another ranch hand approaching from the direction of the barn. "Is there something specific you came to say, Harmon?" Noah asked, his hand resting casually near the pistol on his hip. Harmon seemed to reconsider his approach, glancing at the assembled ranchers. "Just offering a friendly warning. Teaching requires certification in this territory. Wouldn't want anyone operating an illegal school." "Miss Greene is fully certified," Noah replied smoothly. "Her credentials are in order." It was a bluff, and Hazel knew it. Her Massachusetts teaching certificate meant nothing in Arizona territory, and there had been no time to secure proper documentation. She held her breath, hoping Harmon wouldn't call Noah on the lie. The businessman studied Noah's face for a moment, then shrugged. "Well then, no problem at all, though I do wonder what brings such a qualified lady to such a remote location." His eyes slid to Hazel again. "Especially when Copper Creek's offering a teaching position with proper housing in town." "I prefer the arrangement here," Hazel replied firmly, finding her voice. Now, if you'll excuse me, education waits for no one, not even businessmen." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked into the schoolhouse, her heart pounding but her back straight. Behind her, she heard Noah say something to Harmon in a low voice, followed by the sound of horses moving away. Inside, 15 children sat at desks, their faces reflecting varying degrees of concern at the confrontation they'd witnessed through the windows. "Good morning, class," Hazel said brightly, pushing aside her unease. "My name is Miss Greene, and I'm delighted to be your teacher. Today, we begin a wonderful journey together into the world of knowledge." As she launched into her prepared introduction, Hazel tried to focus on the eager faces before her rather than the unsettling encounter outside. One thing was becoming increasingly clear by accepting Noah's offer. She had placed herself not just in a position of opportunity, but potentially in the middle of a local power struggle. The door opened quietly, and Noah slipped in, taking a seat at the back of the room. His presence was reassuring, and Hazel continued her lesson with renewed confidence. Whatever complications lay ahead, at least she wasn't facing them alone. The first week of school passed in a blur of activity as Hazel established routines and assessed her students' abilities. True to her initial assessment, they ranged widely in their educational backgrounds. Daniel Chen, the Chinese merchant's son, was surprisingly advanced in mathematics but struggled with English. The Mexican children were quick learners but hampered by language barriers. The older ranch children had practical knowledge but little formal education. Hazel found herself challenged and invigorated by the task. She developed a system of group work that allowed her to teach multiple levels simultaneously, with older students often helping younger ones. By Friday afternoon, she had established a functioning classroom and earned the respect of most of her pupils. Noah made a point of stopping by each day, sometimes sitting in the back of the room for an hour, other times just checking briefly to ensure all was well. Hazel found his interest gratifying, though sometimes his presence distracted her more than she cared to admit. Friday evening, as Hazel was tidying the schoolhouse after the children had departed, Noah appeared in the doorway. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Of course," Hazel replied, setting aside the slate she'd been cleaning. "Is something wrong?" Noah entered, removing his hat as he did so. "Not wrong exactly. Just wanted to warn you that I'll be heading into Tucson tomorrow. Need to talk to the territorial officials about getting your teaching certification properly recognized." "Oh," Hazel said, surprised. "I hadn't thought about that. Do you think Harmon will cause trouble over it?" "Man like Harmon uses whatever leverage he can find," Noah replied grimly. "Better to remove that particular weapon from his arsenal." "How long will you be gone?" Hazel asked, trying to ignore the small pang of disappointment at the thought of his absence. 3 days, maybe 4, Noah said, leaning against one of the student desks. "Miguel will keep things running here and Luisa will check on you daily." Hazel nodded, touched by his concern for her welfare. "I'll be fine. The school is running smoothly and I have plenty to keep me occupied." Noah seemed to hesitate, then reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small object. "Almost forgot. Picked this up in town yesterday. Thought you might like it for the schoolhouse." He held out a small brass bell, the kind teachers used to call students to attention. Hazel took it, their fingers brushing momentarily in the exchange. "It's perfect," she said, genuinely pleased. "How thoughtful of you." "Just practical," Noah demurred, though his eyes warmed at her appreciation. "Easier than shouting to get their attention." A comfortable silence fell between them. Hazel was acutely aware of how the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows highlighted the gold flecks in Noah's blue eyes, how his presence seemed to fill the small schoolhouse. "I should finish up here," she said finally, breaking the moment. "What time will you leave tomorrow?" "First light," Noah replied, straightening and returning his hat to his head. "Wanted to invite you to supper at the main house tonight, though. Sort of a celebration for completing your first week of teaching." "I'd like that," Hazel said, perhaps too quickly. Noah smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually serious face. "Good. 7 o'clock. I'll be there," Hazel promised. After he left, Hazel found herself humming softly as she completed her tidying. The prospect of an evening in Noah's company left her feeling unaccountably light-hearted. It was dangerous, she knew, to become too attached to a man who was, at the end of the day, her employer. Yet she couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt toward the quiet rancher with his unexpected depth and consistent kindness. That evening, Hazel took special care with her appearance, pinning her hair in a more flattering style and adding a small brooch, one of the few pieces of jewelry she'd brought from Boston, to the collar of her dress. As she walked to the main house, the setting sun cast a golden glow over the ranch, making everything look warm and inviting. To her surprise, Noah met her at the door wearing a clean shirt and vest, his hair damp from a recent washing. The effort he'd made with his appearance sent a little thrill through her. "Right on time," he said, opening the door wider to admit her. "Come in." The main room had been transformed. The table was set with what appeared to be Noah's best dishes. A clean tablecloth covered the usually bare wood, and a small vase of wildflowers served as a centerpiece. Candles provided most of the illumination, casting a warm, intimate glow. "This is lovely," Hazel said, genuinely touched by the effort. "Lewis's doing," Noah admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "Said it wasn't proper to have you to dinner without making it nice." Hazel suspected the older woman's motivations went beyond mere propriety, but she kept that thought to herself. "Where is Louisa? Will she be joining us?" "She cooked but said she needed to get back to Miguel," Noah explained, pulling out a chair for Hazel. "Just us tonight. Hope that's all right." "Of course," Hazel replied, taking her seat and hoping the candlelight disguised the flush she felt rising to her cheeks. Noah served the meal, a hearty beef stew with fresh bread, and a bottle of wine that he confessed he'd been saving for a special occasion. The conversation flowed more easily than Hazel had expected, moving from school matters to books they had both read, to childhood memories. "So after my father died," Noah was saying as they finished the main course, "my mother struggled to keep the farm going. My sister Emily was just 10 and I was 12. I tried to manage, but—" He shook his head. "We lost it within a year." "That must have been devastating," Hazel said softly. Noah nodded, his expression distant with memory. "Mother took work as a housekeeper for a wealthy family in Nashville. They let us live in quarters behind the main house. I worked in their stables, learning about horses. That's where I got my start." "And your sister? You mentioned she stayed in Boston." A shadow crossed Noah's face. "Emily was always clever. Got herself an education somehow, became a teacher like you. Married well, a Boston lawyer. She writes occasionally, but—" He trailed off, and Hazel sensed old pain there. "Families can be complicated," she offered. "My brother Thomas and I were close as children, but after our parents died, he changed, became restless, always seeking his fortune elsewhere." "What about you?" Noah asked. "No husband waiting back east?" Hazel shook her head. "There was someone once, another teacher. We were engaged briefly, but he couldn't accept that I wanted to continue teaching after marriage. We parted ways." "His loss," Noah said simply, his eyes meeting hers across the table. The intensity of his gaze made Hazel's breath catch. To cover her reaction, she reached for her wine glass, accidentally knocking it over. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like a blooming rose. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, jumping up to prevent the wine from dripping onto her dress. Noah was on his feet immediately, grabbing a towel from the kitchen area. "No harm done," he assured her, blotting at the spreading stain. Tablecloth needed washing anyway. As they both worked to contain the spill, their hands met over the damp cloth. Neither pulled away immediately. Hazel looked up to find Noah's face inches from hers, his blue eyes dark in the candlelight. "Hazel," he said softly, her name sounding different somehow in his low voice. The moment hung between them, fragile and charged with possibility. Then the clock on the mantel chimed the hour, breaking the spell. Noah straightened, releasing the towel. "Should probably clear these dishes," he said, his voice slightly rough. Hazel nodded, stepping back. "Let me help." They worked together in companionable silence, washing and drying the dinner plates. As Noah put away the last dish, he turned to her with a more composed expression. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "It's been a long time since I've had such pleasant company for dinner." "Thank you for inviting me," Hazel replied sincerely. "It was a wonderful evening." Noah walked her to the door. Outside, the night had turned cool, stars blazing in the clear desert sky. Without being asked, Noah fell into step beside her as she headed toward her cabin. "Beautiful night," he commented, glancing upward. "It is," Hazel agreed. "I never saw stars like this in Boston. Too many buildings, too much smoke." "One advantage of being out here in the middle of nowhere," Noah said with a slight smile. They reached her cabin door too quickly. Hazel turned to face him, suddenly reluctant for the evening to end. "Safe travels tomorrow," she said. "I hope your business in Tucson goes well." Noah nodded, his expression serious again. "Thank you, and Hazel." He hesitated, then continued, "Be careful while I'm gone." "Harmon isn't one to give up easily when he wants something." "What does he want?" Hazel asked, troubled by Noah's concern. "Control," Noah replied simply. "Over the town, the mines, the water rights, and he doesn't like being defied. By starting the school." "By starting anything he didn't authorize," Noah clarified. "Just stay close to the ranch house, all right. Miguel will be keeping an eye out, but still." Hazel was touched by his concern, even as it unsettled her. "I'll be careful," she promised. They stood for a moment in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Finally, Noah took a step back. "Good night, Hazel," he said softly. "Good night, Noah," she replied, watching as he turned and walked back toward the main house, his tall figure gradually swallowed by the darkness. Inside her cabin, Hazel lit the lamp and sat on the edge of her bed, her mind replaying moments from the evening, the candlelight in Noah's eyes, the brush of his fingers against hers, the way he said her name. Something was happening between them, something unexpected and potentially dangerous to her hard-won independence. Yet as she prepared for bed, Hazel couldn't deny the warmth that filled her at the thought of Noah Blackwood, or the sense that in this remote corner of the Arizona territory, she might have found not just employment but a place where she truly belonged. The next 3 days passed slowly for Hazel. She kept busy with school preparations and spent time with Luisa, learning to cook traditional Mexican dishes and improving her Spanish. The ranch continued its normal routines without Noah, but Hazel was surprised to realize how much his absence affected the atmosphere. The place seemed somehow less vibrant without his quiet presence. On Monday, school resumed, and Hazel threw herself into teaching with renewed enthusiasm. The children were making remarkable progress, particularly the younger ones who had never had formal education before. Even Mr. Chen's son Daniel, initially shy and withdrawn, was beginning to participate more actively in class discussions. It was Wednesday afternoon when Hazel first noticed the rider approaching from the direction of Copper Creek. She was outside with the children for their midday break, supervising a game of tag when Miguel rode up quickly from the corral. "Miss Hazel," he said urgently, "take the children inside, por favor." Hazel followed his gaze to the approaching rider and recognized one of the men who had accompanied Harmon on his previous visit. "Children," she called, keeping her voice calm, "time to continue our lessons. Everyone inside, please." The children, sensing the tension, quickly obeyed. Hazel followed them in, closing the schoolhouse door firmly behind her. Through the window, she watched as Miguel rode out to meet the visitor, intercepting him before he could reach the schoolhouse. "Miss Greene," Daniel tugged at her skirt. "Is something wrong?" Hazel forced a smile. "Not at all." "Let's continue with our geography lesson, shall we? Who can tell me the capital of Arizona Territory?" She kept the children engaged while keeping one eye on the scene outside. The conversation between Miguel and the visitor appeared tense but brief. After a few minutes, the rider turned his horse and departed, though not before casting a long look toward the schoolhouse. When school ended for the day, Miguel was waiting outside as the children departed with their parents. "What did that man want?" Hazel asked once they were alone. Miguel's expression was grave. "He bring message from Senor Harmon. Say the town council meet tomorrow about the school. Say they may vote to close it." "Can they do that?" Hazel asked, alarmed. "Noah said because it's on private property. Senor Harmon has many friends," Miguel interrupted gently. "He make trouble if he want to." "When will Noah return?" Hazel asked, wishing suddenly and intensely for his reassuring presence. "Tomorrow, maybe next day," Miguel replied. "I sent Pablo to Tucson yesterday with news about Harmon. Senor Noah will come quick when he hear." That night, Hazel found sleep elusive. She lay awake in her small cabin, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert night and worrying about what Harmon might do. She had grown to love teaching these children, had begun to feel she was making a real difference in their lives. The thought of losing the school before it had truly begun was devastating. More troubling still was her concern for Noah. If Harmon was determined to challenge him, would it lead to violence? The memory of her brother's fate shot down over a mining claim dispute haunted her. Morning came after a restless night. Hazel dressed carefully in her best dress, determined to present a professional appearance no matter what the day might bring. As she walked to the schoolhouse, she noticed unusual activity around the ranch. Several of the hands were gathered near the bunkhouse, and Miguel appeared to be giving instructions. "Good morning, Miguel," she called, altering her path to approach him. "Is something happening?" Miguel looked uncomfortable. "Just precaution, Miss Hazel. Louisa will stay with you in schoolhouse today." "You're expecting trouble," Hazel stated rather than asked. "Better to be ready," Miguel replied evasively. "Children will come soon. Better you be inside." Hazel nodded, understanding his concern. "Thank you, Miguel, for everything you and Louisa have done." The Mexican foreman's weathered face softened. "Senor Noah, he care much about this school, about you too, I think. We do what he would want." Hazel felt warmth rise to her cheeks at his implication, but said nothing more as she continued to the schoolhouse. Inside, she busied herself with preparations for the day, trying to focus on her lessons rather than her worries. The children arrived as usual, though Hazel noticed several parents lingered longer than normal, speaking in low voices with Miguel outside. Louisa arrived shortly after, taking a seat at the back of the room with her mending basket, her presence both comforting and a stark reminder of potential danger. The morning passed with excruciating slowness. Hazel found it difficult to concentrate on teaching, her attention constantly drawn to the windows and any sound of approaching riders. The children, sensitive to the tension in the air, were unusually subdued. It was just before the midday break when they heard the sound of multiple horses approaching. Lewisa rose quickly, moving to the window. "Many riders," she reported, her voice tense. "Senor Harmon and others from town." Hazel's heart began to pound, but she kept her voice steady as she addressed the class. "Children, please continue with your reading. I'll be right back." Joining Lewisa at the window, Hazel saw a group of at least 8 men riding toward the schoolhouse. Harmon was in the lead, easily recognizable by his expensive clothes and the way he sat his horse as if he owned everything in sight. Behind him rode several men she recognized from town, including the hotel clerk who had turned her away on her first night in Copper Creek. Miguel and several ranch hands had positioned themselves between the approaching party and the schoolhouse, creating a human barrier. Hazel felt sick with apprehension. "I should go out there," she said, moving toward the door. Lewisa caught her arm. "No, Miss Hazel. Senor Noah say you stay inside if trouble come." "But this is about the school about me," Hazel protested. "I can't hide while others face danger on my behalf." Before Lewisa could respond, they heard a new sound, more hoofbeats, coming fast from the direction of the ranch house. Hazel turned to look out the opposite window and felt a surge of relief so powerful it nearly buckled her knees. Noah was riding hard toward the schoolhouse, dust billowing behind his horse. He was alone but moving with such purpose that he seemed a force of nature rather than a single man. "Senor Noah has returned," Lewisa exclaimed, crossing herself quickly. Hazel watched as Noah rode directly to the confrontation, positioning his horse between Miguel and Harmon's party. Though she couldn't hear what was being said, the body language was clear enough. Harmon gesturing angrily, Noah sitting calmly on his horse, apparently unmoved by the other man's bluster. After several tense minutes, Hazel saw Noah dismount and approach Harmon's horse. He reached up, handing something to the businessman, papers of some kind. Harmon examined them, his expression darkening. More words were exchanged, and then, to Hazel's amazement, Harmon wheeled his horse around and led his party back toward town. Noah watched them go, then turned toward the schoolhouse. "Children," Hazel said, returning to the front of the room and trying to keep her voice steady, "let's take our midday break early today. Please go outside carefully and stay near the building." As the children filed out, Noah entered, his expression grim but resolute. His clothes were travel-stained, and he looked as if he hadn't slept in days. "Noah," Hazel said, unable to keep the relief from her voice. "What happened? What did you show Harmon?" Noah pulled off his hat, running a hand through his dust-streaked hair. "Your teaching certification, officially recognized by the territorial governor, and a letter from the territorial marshal informing the Copper Creek Town Council that they have no jurisdiction over educational establishments on private property." "How did you manage that so quickly?" Hazel asked, amazed. A hint of a smile touched Noah's tired face. "Called in some favors. Rode day and night to get back here when Miguel's message reached me." His expression sobered. "Harmon's not giving up, but he'll have to find another angle of attack. For now, the school is secure." The realization that Noah had gone to such lengths, riding without rest, using valuable connections to protect her, and the school, moved Hazel deeply. Without thinking, she stepped forward and placed her hand on his arm. "Thank you," she said simply, her eyes meeting his. "I don't know how to repay such kindness." Noah's gaze held hers, something unspoken passing between them. "You already have," he said quietly, "by bringing learning to these children, by bringing—" He hesitated, then finished, "life to this place." The schoolhouse door opened as Lewisa returned, breaking the moment. "Children, wait outside," she announced. I tell them 5 more minutes. Noah stepped back, replacing his hat. I should let you get back to your teaching, he said formally. We can talk more later. As he turned to leave, Hazel called after him. Will you come to dinner tonight, at my cabin? It's my turn to cook for you. Noah paused, looking back at her with an expression that made her heart race. I'd like that, he said simply. After he left, Hazel found it nearly impossible to concentrate on the afternoon's lessons. Her mind kept returning to the way Noah had looked at her, to the unspoken feelings that seemed to grow stronger between them with each passing day. That evening, she prepared a simple but hearty meal with Lewis's help, setting her small table with care and placing wildflowers in a jar as a centerpiece. As the appointed hour approached, Hazel found herself checking her appearance repeatedly in her small mirror, nervously adjusting her hair and smoothing her dress. A knock at the door sent her heart racing. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, Hazel opened the door to find Noah standing there, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt, a small package tucked under his arm. Come in, she invited, stepping back to allow him entry. Noah ducked his head slightly to pass through the doorway, his tall frame making the small cabin seem even smaller. Brought something for you, he said, holding out the package, sort of a victory celebration. Hazel unwrapped it to find a bottle of good whiskey and a small box of chocolates. How thoughtful, she said, genuinely pleased. Though I'm not sure I deserve a celebration, you did all the real work. We'll celebrate together then, Noah suggested, his eyes warm as they took in the carefully set table and cooking pot bubbling on the small stove. As they shared the meal, Hazel had prepared a hearty stew with dumplings, one of the few dishes she could confidently cook. Noah recounted his journey to Tucson and the connections he'd used to secure her certification. I didn't realize you had such influential friends, Hazel commented as she poured coffee for them both. Noah shrugged. The territorial governor was a Union officer during the war. We served together briefly. He remembered me. You never talk about your war experiences, Hazel observed carefully. Not much to tell that anyone would want to hear, Noah replied, his expression shuddering slightly. Saw things no man should see. Did things I'm not proud of. Like most who fought, I prefer to leave those memories buried. Hazel nodded, understanding his reluctance. My father died in the war, she offered, at Gettysburg. I'm sorry, Noah said sincerely. Union side. Yes, he believed strongly in the cause, Hazel replied, though my mother never recovered from his loss. She followed him 3 years later, pneumonia, the doctors said, but I think it was really a broken heart. And that left you and your brother alone, Noah surmised. Hazel nodded. Thomas was already 18, ready to make his own way. I was 16, determined to become a teacher like my mother had been before her marriage. We went separate ways but kept in touch through letters, when he wrote about finding silver. She trailed off, the familiar grief rising again. Noah reached across the table, his hand covering hers in a gesture of comfort. I'm sorry about your brother. Men like Harmon, men who take what they want without regard for others, they've always existed out here. The law is catching up slowly, but not fast enough for many. His hand was warm on hers, calloused but gentle. Hazel made no move to withdraw it. Is that why you came west? To escape the law? Noah's eyes widened slightly at her direct question. No, he said firmly. I came because after the war there was nothing left for me back east. Too many ghosts, too many bad memories. Out here a man can build something new. And you have, Hazel said softly. This ranch, the school you've created something meaningful here. Noah's gaze intensified. It didn't feel meaningful until recently, he admitted, his voice low. Until you came. The simple statement hung in the air between them, charged with implication. Hazel felt her breath catch, her heart accelerating. "Noah," she began, uncertain what she wanted to say but feeling the need to speak. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it, rising from his chair. "It's getting late," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "I should go." Disappointment washed through Hazel, though she understood his retreat. Whatever was growing between them was complicated by their circumstances, he her employer. She depended on his goodwill for both her livelihood and shelter. She walked him to the door, acutely aware of his presence in the small space. At the threshold, Noah turned to face her, his expression conflicted. "Thank you for dinner," he said formally, "and for what you're doing for the children. It matters, Hazel." "Thank you for making it possible," she replied, looking up at him. For a moment she thought he might say more or perhaps do more. His gaze dropped briefly to her lips, and Hazel felt herself sway slightly toward him, drawn by an invisible force she couldn't name. But Noah stepped back, settling his hat on his head. "Good night," he said softly. "Good night," Hazel echoed. Watching as he walked away into the darkness, closing the door, she leaned against it, her emotions in turmoil. She was falling in love with Noah Blackwood. The realization struck her with the force of absolute certainty. And unless she was completely misreading the situation, he felt something for her as well. But what would come of these feelings? Hazel had no illusions about her position here. She was a woman alone in a harsh territory, dependent on a man's protection and employment. If she acknowledged her feelings, would it change how Noah saw her? Would he expect things she wasn't prepared to give? As she prepared for bed, Hazel resolved to proceed cautiously. The school was only just established, her position still precarious. Better to focus on her teaching and leave these complicated emotions unexplored, at least for now. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, her last thoughts were of Noah's eyes, warm with unspoken feeling as they looked into hers across her small table. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of activity as the school became established as a central part of ranch life. More children joined the classes, including several from Copper Creek itself, whose parents defied Harmon's disapproval to provide their children with education. By the end of October, Hazel was teaching 22 students ranging in age from 5 to 16. Noah had expanded the schoolhouse to accommodate the growing numbers, adding a small library corner with books ordered from back east. He took an active interest in the children's progress, often sitting in on lessons when his ranch duties permitted. Hazel found his presence both encouraging and distracting. She was always conscious of his gaze on her as she taught. Their relationship had settled into a comfortable rhythm of shared meals and conversations about the school, carefully avoiding the deeper feelings that simmered beneath the surface. Hazel told herself this was for the best, though her heart disagreed. It was a crisp November morning when everything changed. Hazel was in the middle of a geography lesson when a ranch hand burst into the schoolhouse, his expression urgent. "Fire at the north pasture," he announced. "Senor Noah says all hands needed. Children must go home now." Hazel immediately took charge, organizing the older children to escort younger ones back to the ranch house where parents could collect them. As the schoolhouse emptied, she grabbed her shawl, intending to help however she could. Outside, the situation was clearly dire. Smoke billowed from beyond the northern ridge and men were rushing about, gathering water barrels and tools. Noah was in the center of the activity, shouting orders and organizing the response. "How bad is it?" Hazel asked, approaching him. Noah turned, surprise crossing his face. "Thought you'd be with the children. It's bad grass fire moving fast toward the winter hay storage, if it reaches there." He didn't need to finish the thought. Loss of the winter feed would be devastating for the ranch. "How can I help?" Hazel asked simply, Noah hesitated only briefly. We need every hand. Can you organize the women to wet down the roofs of the buildings? Sparks could spread the fire if the wind shifts. Hazel nodded and hurried to gather Louisa and the other women who lived on the ranch. For the next several hours, they worked tirelessly, hauling water and soaking the structures closest to the approaching fire. The men formed a fire break, digging trenches and setting backfires to contain the blaze. By late afternoon, the immediate danger had passed, though the fire still smoldered in places. Hazel's arms ached from carrying water buckets, and her dress was ruined with soot and sweat, but she felt a deep satisfaction in having contributed to saving the ranch. As dusk approached, she was helping Louisa distribute food to the exhausted firefighters when Noah returned, his face and clothes blackened with smoke, a bloody gash on his forearm where a burning branch had struck him. "You're hurt," Hazel exclaimed, immediately setting down her basket of bread. "Let me help you." Before Noah could protest, she led him to the water pump, gently cleaning the wound with a damp cloth. "This needs proper cleaning and bandaging," she said, examining the gash. "Come to my cabin. I have medical supplies there." Too tired to argue, Noah followed her. Inside the cabin, Hazel lit a lamp and motioned for him to sit while she gathered clean cloths, alcohol, and bandages. "Take off your shirt," she instructed, her teacher's voice leaving no room for argument. "I need to see if there are other burns." Noah complied silently, wincing slightly as he pulled the ruined shirt over his head. Hazel tried to maintain a professional demeanor as she assessed his injuries, but she couldn't help noticing the lean strength of his torso, the old scars that spoke of a hard life, the way the lamplight played over his skin. Focusing on the task at hand, she cleaned the gash thoroughly, apologizing when Noah hissed in pain as the alcohol made contact with the wound. "You're good at this," he commented as she wrapped a clean bandage around his arm. "My mother taught me basic nursing during the war," Hazel explained. "Our home became an impromptu hospital for a time." Her fingers brushed against his skin as she secured the bandage, and she felt him tense slightly at the contact. Looking up, she found his eyes on her face, their expression intense in the lamplight. "Thank you," he said softly. "Not just for this. For today, you didn't hesitate to help when the ranch was in danger." "Of course not," Hazel replied simply. "This place, it's become important to me." "Just the place?" Noah asked, his voice dropping lower. Hazel's heart began to race. "No," she admitted, "not just the place." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken words. Noah raised his hand slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wished, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Hazel," he said, her name a question and a statement all at once. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly into his touch, allowing herself this moment of honesty after weeks of careful distance. Noah's hand slid to the nape of her neck, drawing her closer with gentle pressure. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his face inches from hers. "I don't want you to stop," Hazel whispered. His lips met hers in a kiss that began tentatively, but quickly deepened as months of restrained feelings broke free. Hazel found herself responding with an intensity that might have shocked her Boston self, her hands coming to rest on Noah's bare shoulders as she kissed him back. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the first week you were here," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" Hazel asked, her fingers tracing the line of his collarbone. "Because I didn't want you to think it was expected," Noah replied seriously. "Because you needed this job, this place to stay, and I never wanted you to feel that your position here depended on anything else." His consideration touched her deeply. "And now I can't pretend anymore," Noah said simply. I care for you, Hazel, more than I thought possible. But if you don't feel the same, she silenced him with another kiss, brief but definitive. I feel the same, she assured him. I've been fighting it, telling myself it was impractical, that I needed to maintain my independence. But today, seeing the ranch in danger, seeing you risking yourself to save it, I realized life is too uncertain to deny what's in my heart. Noah's smile transformed his smoke-smudged face. And what is in your heart, Hazel Greene? You, she replied simply. You opened your door to me when all others were closed, and somewhere along the way, I opened my heart to you as well. Noah drew her into his arms, holding her against his chest as if she were precious and fragile. Hazel could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady beneath her ear. What happens now? She asked softly. Noah's hand stroked her hair gently. Now we take our time, get to know each other properly, do things right. He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. I'm not a wealthy man, Hazel, and this ranch demands hard work every day. But if you could see a future here with me, I'd spend my life trying to make you happy. The simple sincerity of his words brought tears to Hazel's eyes. I already see that future, she told him. It's clearer to me than anything has been in a very long time. Later, after Noah had reluctantly put his shirt back on and departed with a lingering kiss goodnight, Hazel sat alone in her cabin, her fingers touching her lips in wonder. The day had begun with danger and ended with a new beginning she hadn't dared to hope for. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Harmon's continued opposition, the harsh realities of ranch life, the gossip that would inevitably arise from their relationship, Hazel knew they would face them together. In this remote corner of Arizona territory, she had found not just refuge but love, not just employment but purpose. As she prepared for bed, exhausted but happier than she could remember being in years, Hazel thought of all the closed doors that had led her here to the one door that had remained open, and the man who had opened it. The winter of 1878-1879 proved to be one of the harshest in memory for Arizona territory. Heavy snows isolated Blackwood Ranch for weeks at a time, making travel to Copper Creek dangerous and sometimes impossible. School continued despite the weather, with children from the ranch attending regularly while those from outlying areas came when conditions permitted. The challenging conditions brought Noah and Hazel closer together. They spent long evenings by the fire in the main house, reading aloud from Noah's collection of books, planning improvements for the school, and slowly sharing the deeper parts of themselves they had previously kept hidden. Noah spoke of his war experiences, the horrors he had witnessed at Shiloh and Chickamauga, the friends he had lost, the wounds both physical and spiritual that had driven him west in search of healing. Hazel told him of her struggles as a female teacher in Boston, fighting for respect in a profession dominated by men, and of her complicated relationship with her brother, whose restless spirit had ultimately led to his death. Their courtship progressed with proper decorum, mindful of their positions in the small community of the ranch. Noah was careful to show Hazel every respect, always conscious of her reputation. They shared meals, conversations, and increasingly tender moments, but he never presumed more than she offered freely. By Christmas, their relationship was an acknowledged fact among the ranch residents, who mostly approved of the match. Louisa took particular satisfaction in developments, often telling Hazel she had known from the first day that the Señorita and Señor Noah were destined for each other. The holiday was celebrated with simple joy, the schoolhouse decorated with paper chains and pine boughs, the children performing a nativity play for their parents. Noah surprised Hazel with a gift of a fine woolen shawl ordered months earlier from a catalog, while she presented him with a hand-knitted scarf, she had worked on secretly during evening hours. It was in the quiet moment after exchanging these gifts, sitting together on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars, that Noah first told Hazel he loved her. She returned the words without hesitation, knowing them to be absolutely true. With the arrival of spring, the snow melted and travel became easier. News reached them that Jack Harmon had suffered financial setbacks during the winter. Several of his mining investments had failed to produce as expected, and a business partner in Tucson had absconded with a significant sum. While not ruined, his position in Copper Creek was weakened. Taking advantage of this development, Noah rode into town to meet with several businessmen who had grown tired of Harmon's control. He returned with unexpected news. "The town council has officially requested that you establish a proper school in Copper Creek," he announced to Hazel one evening in late March. "They're offering to provide a building and salary." Hazel looked up from the essays she was grading, surprised. "After all this time opposing us?" "What changed?" "Harmon's grip is slipping," Noah explained, taking a seat beside her at the kitchen table. "And the families who have been sending their children here have been vocal about the progress they've made. The merchants are realizing that a proper school would attract more families to settle in the area, which means more business." "What did you tell them?" Hazel asked, setting aside her work. "That I'd discuss it with you," Noah replied. "It's your decision, Hazel. The ranch school has served its purpose, proving your abilities, establishing education in the area. A town school would reach more children, provide you with proper facilities." Hazel considered the proposal, weighing the opportunities against what she would lose. "If I taught in town, I'd have to live there," she said slowly. "It wouldn't be proper to travel back and forth each day, especially in winter." Noah nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "True. The council mentioned providing housing as part of the arrangement." "And I'd be working for the town, not for you," Hazel continued, watching his face. "Also true," Noah agreed. "What do you want me to do?" Hazel asked directly. Noah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I want what's best for you, Hazel. You're a gifted teacher. More children should benefit from that gift, but selfishly." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Selfishly, I want you here, not just for the ranch children, but for me." Hazel reached across the table, taking his hand. "Ask me to stay, Noah." His fingers tightened around hers. "Stay with me, Hazel. Not as my employee, but as my wife. I've been wanting to ask for months, waiting for the right moment. This isn't how I planned it, but—" He drew a deep breath. "I love you. Marry me and we'll build something lasting together, the ranch, the school, a family of our own." Joy flooded through Hazel at his words. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to staying, yes to becoming your wife, yes to everything a future with you promises." Noah's face lit with happiness. He rose, pulling her gently to her feet and into his arms. "I'll ride back to town tomorrow," he said between kisses. "Tell them they'll need to find another teacher. My future wife has important work to do right here." Their wedding took place in May, when the desert was briefly transformed by wildflowers. The ceremony was held in the schoolhouse, decorated by the children with streamers and bouquets. The territorial judge rode from Tucson to officiate, and families from neighboring ranches joined the celebration. Hazel wore a new dress of pale blue silk, ordered from a dressmaker in Tucson. Noah, looking uncharacteristically nervous, waited for her at the front of the room, his usually confident posture stiff with tension until the moment she appeared in the doorway. The joy that transformed his face when he saw her was a memory Hazel knew she would treasure forever. The reception afterward was a true Western celebration, with tables laden with food contributed by every family, music provided by local musicians, and dancing that continued well into the night. Even a few residents of Copper Creek attended, including Mr. Chen and his family, their presence signaling a shift in the town's attitude toward Blackwood Ranch. As darkness fell and lanterns were lit around the yard, Noah led Hazel away from the festivities toward a quiet spot beneath a cottonwood tree. "Happy, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Hazel replied truthfully, resting her hands on his chest. "Though I'm still getting used to my new name." "It suits you," Noah said, brushing a kiss against her temple. "I have something for you, a wedding gift." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. From it, he spilled a delicate gold chain with a small pendant into her palm. "It was my mother's," he explained as Hazel examined the simple but beautiful piece. "The only thing of value she managed to keep when we lost the farm. She gave it to me before she died, said to save it for the woman who would make my house a home." Tears welled in Hazel's eyes at the sentiment. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I'll treasure it always." Noah fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers lingering on her skin. "There's more," he said. "Come with me." Curious, Hazel allowed him to lead her away from the party, down the path toward his now their house. But instead of turning toward the familiar building, he continued past it to a stand of trees beyond. "Close your eyes," Noah instructed when they reached the trees. Hazel complied, her heart beating faster with anticipation. She heard the creak of a door opening, felt Noah's hand guide her forward a few steps. "Now look," he said softly. Hazel opened her eyes to find herself standing in a small, perfect library. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes new and old. A desk stood near the window, already equipped with writing materials. Two comfortable chairs flanked a small fireplace and a colorful rug covered the wooden floor. "Noah," she breathed, turning in a circle to take it all in. "What is this?" "Your space," he replied, watching her reaction with evident satisfaction. "Every teacher needs a proper library. Every wife deserves a room of her own. I've been building it in secret for months, whenever you were busy with the school." Hazel ran her fingers over the spines of the books, recognizing some from Noah's collection and many others that were new. "How did you get all these?" "Ordered them from catalogs. Had friends in Tucson pick up others when they traveled east. Some were my sister's. She sent them when I wrote telling her I was getting married." "It's perfect," Hazel said, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Absolutely perfect." Noah's expression grew serious. "I want you to have everything, Hazel. A satisfying profession, a comfortable home, a husband who appreciates your mind as much as your heart. I may not be able to give you the luxuries you knew in Boston, but I promise you'll never lack for respect or love." Hazel crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "All I want is you," she said simply. "Everything else is just a blessing added to that central joy." As Noah's lips met hers in a kiss that held both tenderness and promise, Hazel knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home not in a place, but in a person. The journey that had begun with rejection at every door had led her to the one door that mattered most, the one that had stayed open when all others closed. Outside, the sounds of celebration continued, music and laughter drifting on the evening breeze. But for Noah and Hazel, the world had narrowed to this moment, this room, this beginning of a shared life filled with purpose and love. 5 years later, 1884, the sound of children's laughter drifted through the open windows of Blackwood Ranch's expanded schoolhouse as Hazel concluded the day's lessons. 28 students now attended regularly, including children from as far as 15 miles away who boarded at the ranch during the week. "Remember to complete your history essays before Monday," she reminded them as they gathered their books and slates. And those of you participating in the territorial spelling competition need to practice extra diligently. As the children filed out, Hazel's gaze was drawn to the 3-year-old boy sitting patiently in the small chair near her desk, his dark curls and blue eyes a perfect blend of his parents' features. "Were the big children good today, Mama?" Thomas Blackwood asked seriously, his small face earnest. "Very good," Hazel assured him, gathering her teaching materials. "And you were excellent too, sitting quietly during story time." The boy beamed at her praise, sliding off his chair to take her outstretched hand. Together they walked from the schoolhouse toward the main ranch house, which had been expanded considerably over the past 5 years. A covered porch now wrapped around 3 sides, flower gardens brightened the front yard, and a new wing had been added to accommodate their growing family. "Papa home?" Thomas asked as they approached. "Not yet, sweetheart," Hazel replied. "He rode to Copper Creek for supplies. He should be back before supper." Inside, they found Louisa in the kitchen, keeping an eye on 1-year-old Emily, who was napping in a cradle near the stove. The older woman had become like family over the years, her affection for the Blackwood children evident in everything from the special treats she baked for them to the handmade toys she crafted for birthdays and Christmas. "How is my Pequeña Princesa?" Hazel asked softly, bending to brush a kiss against her daughter's forehead. "Sleeping like an angel now," Louisa reported. "But she was most determined to crawl everywhere this morning. That one will be trouble, I think." Hazel smiled, recognizing the same assessment she had already made of her daughter's strong personality. "Like her father," she agreed. "Determined and unstoppable once she sets her mind to something." While Thomas helped Louisa set the table a task, he took very seriously Hazel settled in the comfortable chair by the window with her gradebook. The ranch had prospered under Noah's management, expanding to include more cattle, a successful horse breeding operation, and even a small apple orchard that had begun producing fruit the previous year. The school had grown as well, gaining recognition throughout the territory for its excellent results. Several of Hazel's former students had gone on to continue their education in Phoenix or Tucson, including Daniel Chen, who was now studying medicine in San Francisco. Copper Creek itself had changed dramatically. The railroad had arrived 2 years earlier, bringing new businesses and residents. Jack Harmon had eventually sold most of his interests and moved to California, his departure allowing for more democratic governance of the growing town. Noah now served on the town council, his practical wisdom and fair-minded approach earning him respect even from former adversaries. The sound of horses approaching drew Hazel's attention from her work. Looking out the window, she saw Noah riding in, accompanied by Miguel's oldest son Juan, who now worked as one of the ranch's regular hands. Thomas heard the horses too, abandoning his table-setting duties to race to the door. "Papa's home," he announced excitedly. Hazel followed at a more sedate pace, watching as her son burst out the door and ran toward the approaching riders. Noah, spotting the boy, swung down from his horse and crouched to catch Thomas in a hug, lifting him high in the air to the child's delight. The sight still had the power to move Hazel deeply, this strong, capable man who had faced war and hardship, who could break wild horses and face down adversaries without flinching, being so gentle and openly affectionate with his children. Noah set Thomas down and approached the house, his face lighting with pleasure at the sight of Hazel waiting on the porch. After 5 years of marriage, his smile still had the power to quicken her pulse. "How are my favorite people today?" he asked, climbing the steps to kiss her briefly but warmly. Eager to hear about your trip to town, Hazel replied, noting the extra saddlebags he carried. Successful, I take it? Very, Noah confirmed, following her into the house. After greeting Louisa and checking on his sleeping daughter, he began unpacking his purchases: coffee, sugar, fabric Hazel had requested, a small bag of candy for Thomas, and a delicate silver rattle for Emily. And there's news, he added, accepting the cup of coffee Louisa offered. The territorial legislature has approved funding for a proper school building in Copper Creek. They've asked if you'd be willing to help design it, given the success of our school here. That's wonderful, Hazel said sincerely. The town has needed a proper school for years. There's more, Noah continued, his expression serious but with an underlying excitement. They're establishing a school board to oversee education throughout the county. They've asked me to serve on it, and they want you to consider the position of county superintendent of schools. Hazel sat down abruptly, shocked by the offer. Superintendent, but that would mean overseeing all the schools in the county, training new teachers, establishing standards, Noah confirmed. It would mean more travel, more responsibility, but also more opportunity to influence education beyond just our school. What about teaching here? Hazel asked, her mind racing with the possibilities. We'd need to hire another teacher, Noah acknowledged, but you could still oversee the curriculum, still be involved. And the position comes with a substantial salary, enough to hire additional help for the house and children when you need to travel. Hazel's thoughts turned to her students, to the school she had built from nothing, to the life she and Noah had created together. I need time to think about it, she said finally. It's an honor to be considered, but also a significant change for our family. Noah nodded, understanding as always. There's no rush to decide. The program won't begin until next fall. He reached across the table to take her hand. Whatever you choose, I'll support you fully. You know that. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Hazel and Noah sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments at day's end when they could simply be together, sharing thoughts and plans and sometimes just comfortable silence. What are you thinking about the superintendent position? Noah asked, his arm around her shoulders. Hazel leaned into his embrace, considering her answer carefully. I'm thinking about the girl who arrived in Copper Creek 6 years ago, turned away from every door, how she could never have imagined this life, this opportunity. Noah's arm tightened around her. You've earned every bit of it through your own abilities. I just opened a door. You built everything that followed. We built it together, Hazel corrected gently. And now we have a chance to build something even larger, to bring education to children throughout the county, to shape how the next generation will learn. So you're considering it? Noah asked. More than considering, Hazel admitted. I think I want to accept. But only if you're truly supportive, only if we can make it work for our family. Noah turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Hazel Blackwood, have I ever given you reason to doubt my support for your ambitions? Your work matters to me, to our children, to this community. If this new role calls to you, then we will make it work together, as we've done with everything else. The sincerity in his voice, the unwavering confidence in his eyes, filled Hazel with gratitude and love. How did I get so fortunate? She wondered aloud. To find a man who values my mind as well as my heart. I'm the fortunate one, Noah countered, bringing her hands to his lips. Every day, I thank whatever providence led you to my door that night. You've brought light and learning and love to a place that needed all three. As the night deepened around them, Hazel rested her head on Noah's shoulder, content in the knowledge that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them side by side. From a desperate beginning, a woman with nowhere to turn, and a man whose door stayed open when all others closed, they had built not just a marriage but a partnership of equals. Not just a home but a legacy of education that would benefit generations to come. The stars shone overhead, brilliant in the clear desert sky, as they had on that first night when Hazel had arrived in Copper Creek. But now, instead of symbols of cold indifference, they seemed to Hazel like promises fulfilled, like blessings counting themselves against the darkness as numerous and enduring as the reasons she had to be thankful for the journey that had brought her home.